The Lord be with you. A reading from the Holy Gospel according to Matthew. Now Jesus told his disciples this parable. A man going on a journey called in his servants, and he entrusted his possessions to them. To one he gave 5 talents, to another 2, and to a third 1, and to each according to their ability. And then he went away. Immediately the one who received the 5 talents went and traded them, and he made another 5. Likewise, the one who received 2 made another 2. But the man who received 1 went off, dug a hole in the ground, and buried his master's money. After a long time, the master of those servants came back, and he settled accounts with them. The one who had received the 5 talents came forward, bringing an additional 5. He said to the master, "Master, you gave me 5 talents. See, I have made 5 more." Oh, his master said to him, "Well done, good and faithful servant. Since you have been faithful in small things, I will grant you great responsibilities. Come and share your master's joy." Then the one who had received 2 talents also came forward, and he said, "Master, you gave me 2 talents. See, I have made 2 more." His master said to him, "Well done, good and faithful servant. Since you were faithful over small matters, I will give you great responsibility. Come and share your master's joy." And then the one who had received 1 talent came forward and said, "Master, I knew you were a demanding person, harvesting where you did not plant and gathering where you did not scatter. So out of fear, I went off and buried your talent in the ground. Here it is back." His master said to him in reply, "You wicked and lazy servant, you knew that I harvest what I did not plant and I gather what I did not scatter. Should you not then have put the money in the bank so that I could at least get it back with interest on my return? Now then, take the talent from the one who has only 1 and give it to the one who has 10. For everyone who has, more will be given, until they grow rich. But from the one who has not, even what little he has will be taken away. And now throw this useless servant into the darkness outside, where there will be wailing and grinding of teeth." The Gospel of the Lord. The good news of Jesus. For everyone who has, more will be given to them until they grow rich. And for the one who has not, what little he has is going to be taken away. Oh, the only people this can make happy is the 1%. This is really tough stuff. Especially now when we're talking about income inequality and how do we level the playing field, and nothing is level. And we've got Jesus saying, no, the more you got, the more you're going to get. And what little you have or you think you have, you're going to lose it away. What in the world is he talking about? He's not talking about material things. He's saying, as a matter of fact, you are to avoid greed in all of its forms. The wonder of material stuff is for security, and that's a wonderful thing. That's a beautiful thing. However, there is something else that he's talking about. And this is what we need to understand today. Because in the world of haves and have-nots, when it comes to God and when it comes to spirituality, we are all haves. We are all rich. As a matter of fact, if we are taking St. Matthew seriously in the Sermon on the Mount, when he says, "Blessed are the poor in spirit, blessed are the poor, for they are rich in the grace of God, for the kingdom of God is theirs," how often those who have the least material things in the world have the spiritual riches. I was pastor in the smallest, poorest parish in the Diocese of Joliet for many years, and these people have the most profound, richest faith you can believe. And so what God is saying to us today is, you've got talents. America's got talent. St. Corpus Christi has talent. The question is, what do you do with it? Now, that's really the issue before us today. The talent is already here. What does that mean? That means that deep inside of each and every one of us, at the very core of our being, is divine DNA. At the very core of our being, we have a God gene. And what does this God gene do? Well, what does God do? What does God do? God, whenever God is manifested, what does God do? He gives. He shares. As a matter of fact, if we look at God in the person of God, God in the Holy Trinity, what is the great mystery that we celebrate? The great mystery we celebrate is that God is constantly giving himself to the Son. The Son is constantly giving himself back to the Father. All that he has, which is everything, he gives away. And in this giving away, this spirit is generated, and it's a spirit of love and bond and unity and strength. And I want to say to each and every one of us here today in the sound of my voice, you got it. You've got talents. You know, in the Old Testament or in the New Testament, when Jesus is talking about talents, he's talking about a great sum. Well, I'm talking about an infinite sum. As deep as the river, as high as the mountain, it is the God gene inside of each and every one of you. And it's a magnificent, wonderful gift. Now the question is, how do we access it? If this divine gift is really in you, if you are the haves, and I want to state unequivocally, you are, I am, we are the haves. We got it. How do we access it? How do we allow it to grow? So I'm going to give kind of a how-to homily today, or maybe even sermon today, how to access the God gene, how to access the divine part of who we are. And I think the very first step that we need to do is recognize it. To see it. To see it. You know, they have a thing called the MacArthur Genius Grant that they give to people that have genius every day. I want to say to you that each and every one of you has a right now to a genius grant. You don't get the money, but you got the genius part. Right? You got the genius part. And what's the genius part? The genius part is that God gene. And here your work is to see it and to recognize it. Now the problem is, if we have a special gift, and everyone has a special gift, it may be manifested in many, many different ways. You know, St. Paul says some of us are teachers and some of us are preachers, and he says all these different lists of ways and different gifts and different talents that we have. It's the same God, it's the same Spirit, it's the same power, it's the same reality, but it's going to be manifested in different ways. Well, what's your way? Do you know what it is? Do you know what your gift is? Could you name it to me today if I was going to ask you? Most people can't. And the reason that they can't is because they're so close to it, they think it's normal, it's natural. I can remember the first time somebody said to me, you know, the most scary thing that a human being can do is to get up in front of an audience and speak in public. I went, no, I didn't know that. I'm clueless when it comes to that. You know? But it still has to be pointed out to you. I was in about 4th grade, and my teacher looked at me. She says, Anthony, you are a motor mouth. I said, thank you very much. And she says, you're also a wordsmith. I said, what's that mean? She says, well, you take words and you put them together and they come out and people like to listen. It's a gift. It's a gift. You know, from that day on, I began to work on how I put things together. How they're going to come across, what words I'm going to use. I'll practice the words in my head before I speak them. I know that my homilies sound like I'm making them up as they go along. I spend hours on these suckers. Forever. But because somebody named it, I work on it. Now, the question is, since you can't see your own gifts, those around you can. So I'm going to give you a little luncheon assignment today. When you go home and you're sitting around lunch, I want you to go around the table with the parents and the kids, and I want you to say, you know what your genius is? You know what your talent is? You know what your gift is? And then tell them. And then tell them, here's what I see in you. I see a good listener. I see somebody really compassionate. Remember when my little granddaughter, Azucena, was a little girl, she was setting the table and she couldn't do enough. And I said, oh, Azucena, do you know what I see in you? She said, what? You've got a servant's heart. And once that's named, it begins to grow. So whether you're a good listener, whether you're a good letter writer, whatever that gift may be that you see in the people that you love, let them know. Let them know. Speak it out loud. So the first idea and the first thing we need to do is to see it, to name it. The second is to claim it. It is my identity. It is my deepest reality. My deepest DNA is divine. Now how is that going to be manifest in my life? Everybody's got three names. They've got a given name, they've got a surname, and they've got a secret name, a God name. And I hope that everybody at some point gets to understand what their God name is, what their secret name is. And you discover your secret name by when you are doing it, you go, whoa, this is me. It's always an action thing. It's always something that you're doing. It's the incarnation of the God Spirit and a manifestation to the outer world. And after lots and lots and lots of years of trying to figure it out, what my secret name is, what my God name is, I finally came up with it. My secret name is midwife. Because a midwife doesn't do anything except say, push! Go! You can do this! I'm a cheerleader. And what I want to say to the whole world is, you've got gifts, get out there and use them. And when somebody says, after I've done whatever I do, they said, you know what? You said it and I grew. Oh, I can walk on air. I can walk on air. Claim whatever your gift is. And then finally, do it. Use it. Spiritual gifts are either use it or lose it. Well, the reality is we don't lose it. You can't lose God. I'm sorry. But you can sure make it shrink. And the way we make it shrink is by being very afraid. The man who dug the pit and put his one talent in the ground did it because he was afraid. And we get so afraid, and we hold ourselves together, and we begin to wither up and die when we don't take it and throw it out and spend it and work on it. And then it shrinks. We become Grinches. And as I've been preparing for Advent and Christmas homilies, I reread the Grinch that stole Christmas, and it fits for today. What happened to the Grinch? The Grinch has the God gene, but it's shrunk really small, and everything was bothering him, the noise and the toys and the kids. And Dr. Seuss comments on what happened to the Grinch. He says it could be that his head wasn't screwed on just right, or it could be perhaps that his shoes were too tight, but I think the most likely reason of all may have been that his heart was 2 sizes too small. Our heart and our soul shrinks or expands. It shrinks or expands insofar as we exercise it, insofar as we use it, insofar as we become soulful people or we become heart people. You gotta do it. An old Jew once was asked, how do you get to Carnegie Hall? And he responded, practice, practice, practice. How do you get a large heart? How do you get a big soul? Practice, practice, practice. Now here's the thing about your gift. It's not for you. If it's just for your own aggrandizement, it's another ego trip. You're going nowhere with it. But it's for everybody around you because it is the God gene. The God gene has to be self-forgetful. The God gene has to go outside of itself. Now it will do the opposite of what happens in the material world. In the material world, The law of entropy says that the matter of the world is falling apart. The world is unwinding. So that when something is used up in the material world, it's used up. But in the spiritual world, it's just the opposite. When you use something, it grows. When you exercise it, it becomes more. And that was the great Grinch's revelation. When he saw that the people of Whoville were just completely filled with love and care, whether they had presents or not, it wasn't important to him. Something happened to him. All of a sudden, he began to see that what was inside of his soul was the same that was inside their soul to do this in the same way. And they talked about his change, and they said, maybe Christmas, he thought, doesn't come from a store. And what happened then? Well, in Whoville, they say that the Grinch's small heart grew 3 sizes that day. That's our work. Help it to grow. Help it to grow. Every day, sit down and say, what shall I do to make my soul grow? And make a list. Or what I do is I get a calendar. And every day that I want to do something that's going to help my soul to grow, I check it off. I check off every time somebody cuts me off and I go, God bless you. Check it off! I'm getting better! Or somebody's in a grocery store and I don't want to see or talk to them, and I stop and I have a little conversation with them. I check it off. Just choose one a month. And all of a sudden the world begins to change, and you begin to change, because what are you doing? You're expanding your soul. You're using your gifts. You're getting really wonderfully, beautifully, magnificently rich.